In 1 Kings 8 verse 56 we read this: "Praise be to the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us." Solomon spent 7 years building a temple for God. This was the absolute high point of Israel's history. They had peace from enemies on every side. They had unmatched wealth and political power. And now here in the midst of Israel, a permanent home for God. 1 Kings 6 verse 14 says, "So Solomon built the temple and completed it." It goes on to say, he prepared the inner sanctuary with the temple, within the temple, to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. There was exquisite decor, flawless detail to this place where God dwelt. The temple was made with these huge stones cut out of a quarry. There was expensive wood, floor to ceiling, clad in the walls, and they was overlaid with pure gold. Everywhere was gold. It was shiny and glorious. No expense was spared. And at the dedication of the temple, thousands of animals were sacrificed. 1 Kings 8 verse 10 says, "When the priests withdrew from the holy place, the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple." God had come. His presence was symbolized within this cloud, behind the curtain, and they couldn't minister because of this presence, this thick presence of God. This was where God dwelt. It was behind a thick, ornately decorated curtain where the ark, containing tablets of 10 commandments. This was the stones that Moses himself received with the 10 commandments written on them. Finally, a permanent home for Yahweh. They could worship God. And then we read this. In 1 Kings 7, it took Solomon 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. So we've got Solomon building this temple, amazing, glorious. But on himself, rather than the 7 years, he spent 13 years. I like surfing. And I remember before I started actually surfing, watching things like Hawaii 5-0 and seeing these great pictures of these barreling waves and this tanned man in board shorts going through the tubes. But it's a million miles from the reality of standing with your fingers so freezing cold, mooning in some pay and display car park in Bude trying to get your wetsuit off. And I think we see in Solomon that the reality of day-to-day life can dull our passion for actually meeting with him. We, like Solomon, can get distracted by outward religion. Or we can, we'll see next time that Solomon himself got distracted, his head's turned through the trappings of wealth and success. But the day-to-day reality of Solomon's temple was that man did not meet God behind the temple. He couldn't. It was too holy. The presence was so thick, the holiness would kill a man. But he meets God in the middle of this beautiful golden hallway at the altar. And the place is spoiled and ruined and messed up with the blood of the sacrifice because of the sins of man. At the cross, this curtain was torn. And it meant that man could now enter the presence of a holy God. Not anymore at the altar. The altar was the cross. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 16 says, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst?" Peter said in 1 Peter 2:5, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. We are now the place where God dwells. Let's strive not to lose sight and take for granted the wonder of being able now just to nip behind the curtain and encounter a holy God.